Today is April 30th, 2025, and you're listening to Space News First Up.
Did you know Space News now has 6 newsletters? We recently added an audio, video, and live events newsletter and are now launching our bi-weekly China report. To sign up, visit spacenews.com/newsletters.
Here are today's top headlines in space. An Alpha rocket from Firefly Aerospace malfunctioned on a launch Tuesday morning, preventing its Lockheed Martin payload from reaching orbit. The U.S. Space Force is moving to replace its specialized military satellites used for geostationary surveillance with systems built and operated by commercial vendors. The FCC is starting a review of its satellite spectrum sharing rules that could pit geosatellite operators against LEO constellation companies. Amazon's Project Kuiper is working with L3 Harris to provide military communication services. Space tracking company Slingshot Aerospace is providing a new service that allows countries to build independent space monitoring capabilities. And a French startup is developing a system to intercept satellites and debris.
First Up is produced by Space News, the industry standard for professional space journalism. Visit spacenews.com for breaking news, policy updates, and original analysis.
We begin today with news that an Alpha rocket from Firefly Aerospace malfunctioned on a launch Tuesday morning, preventing its Lockheed Martin payload from reaching orbit. The Alpha lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base at 9:37 a.m. Eastern after a one-day delay because of problems with ground equipment. The vehicle, though, suffered an anomaly during stage separation, creating debris and causing the loss of the nozzle of the upper stage engine. That reduced the thrust of the engine, and Firefly later said it failed to reach orbit, re-entering near Antarctica. The rocket was carrying a Lockheed Martin LM-400 satellite that Lockheed intended to fly on a brief technology demonstration mission. This was the second launch failure in 6 flights of Alpha, with 2 others placing payloads in orbits lower than intended. The U.S. Space Force is moving to replace its specialized military satellites used for geostationary surveillance with systems built and operated by commercial vendors. The Space Force signed off on a plan Tuesday that will replace the Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, GSSAP constellation, currently a bespoke set of satellites built solely for military use, with commercially developed alternatives. Under the new framework, the Space Force will allow multiple commercial vendors to build, launch, and operate surveillance satellites for the military. The new program will be unclassified and available for sale to allies. The FCC is starting a review of its satellite spectrum sharing rules that could pit geosatellite operators against LEO constellation companies. FCC commissioners voted unanimously this week to adopt a notice of proposed rulemaking to update equivalent power flux density (EPFD) limits, set up more than 30 years ago to regulate how strong signals from satellites in non-geostationary orbits can be to avoid disrupting geosatellites flying overhead. The FCC argues that technology advances can enable spectrum sharing between systems and allow LEO constellations to operate at higher power levels to provide better service. Some geosatellite operators are skeptical, though, fearing changes could compromise critical services while stifling innovation and future investments in their part of the industry. Amazon's Project Kuiper is working with L3 Harris to provide military communication services. Kuiper, Government Solutions, a subsidiary of Project Kuiper, has partnered with L3 Harris to shape satellite payloads that meet the standards of military and public safety users. That would include incorporating those services with Amazon Web Services, providing not just communications but also enabling advanced data processing and analysis capabilities. Space tracking company Slingshot Aerospace is providing a new service that allows countries to build independent space monitoring capabilities. The new Sovereign Space Object Tracking Service is intended to give countries more control over their space domain awareness capabilities, going beyond using Slingshot's service to include establishing their own sensor networks. Countries can also tap into Slingshot's existing global sensor network, which currently spans 22 locations, for a broader view of orbital activity. A French startup is developing a system to intercept satellites and debris. DARC, established in 2022 by veterans of European defense contractors MBDA and Thales, aims to demonstrate a space weapon that would launch from a modified commercial aircraft, navigate to a target in orbit, grab it, and safely deposit it in the South Pacific Ocean. The company, with 40 employees and $11 million in funding, is working toward a first test flight scheduled for 2027 that will aim only to rendezvous and shadow a target to prove navigation capabilities. Later missions would demonstrate capture and deorbit. In other news, 3 Chinese astronauts returned to Earth Wednesday after 6 months in orbit. The Shenzhou 19 spacecraft landed within the Dongfeng landing area in Inner Mongolia at 1:08 a.m. Eastern. On board were Kai Shuzhe, Song Lingdong, and Wang Haos, who spent 183 days in space in the Tiangong space station. The 3 were all in good health after landing. ESA launched an Earth science satellite on a Vega C rocket Tuesday. The vehicle lifted off from Kourou, French Guiana, at 5:15 a.m. Eastern, placing the Biomass satellite into a sun-synchronous orbit. Biomass, part of ESA's Earth Explorer program, features a radar payload that will study the Earth's forest to allow scientists to better calculate the carbon stored there, among other uses. The launch was the first for the Vega C since its return to flight last December, and ESA said the rocket will continue to receive extra scrutiny for the next few launches. China is making progress on developing large stainless steel propellant tanks for future heavy-lift rockets. The China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, CALT, has announced the development of prototype stainless steel propellant tanks 5 and 10.6 meters in diameter over the past month. CALT declared the larger tank a major breakthrough in development of future heavy-lift rockets like the Long March 9, whose design has evolved in part based on the development of SpaceX's Starship. Reuters reports that New Zealand is the latest country whose military has set up a space unit. The New Zealand Air Force announced Wednesday the creation of a space unit, called Squadron No. 62. It will start operations in July with 15 Air Force personnel, with the potential to add more from New Zealand's Army and Navy. New Zealand also recently joined Operation Olympic Defender, a U.S.-led multinational space defense initiative. Collect Space reports that the NASA engineer who led the development of a system to keep the Apollo 13 astronauts alive has died. Ed Smiley was responsible for the creation of a jury-rigged adapter that allowed carbon dioxide scrubbers created to work in the Apollo spacecraft's command module to be used in the lunar module. That system, whose creation was dramatized in the movie Apollo 13, involved items on the spacecraft ranging from a sock to cue cards. Smiley, who later held positions at NASA headquarters and the Goddard Space Flight Center, died earlier this month at the age of 95.